All right, let's get right into it. A brand new intelligence report just landed, and wow, it is sending some serious shockwaves across the globe. Some folks are looking at this and calling it a doomsday warning, a sign that we are right on the edge of a new unstable era. But others see something totally different. They see a once-in-a-generation shot at a total global reset. So which one is it? A crisis or a catalyst? Let's break it down.
So, the report, which is dated today, January 21st, 2026, kicks off with this: a critical alert status high. And let's be clear, this isn't some far-off prediction. Nope. This is a real-time assessment of things that have happened in just the last 24 hours. The data paints a pretty clear picture of a world in turmoil. But what that turmoil actually means, well, that is very much up for debate.
To really get to the heart of what this report is telling us, we're going to look at the exact same intelligence through two different lenses, the eyes of two competing risk analysts. First up, we've got Priya. She's the pragmatist. She looks at the data and sees a world teetering on the brink of a whole series of crises. And then we have Leo, the opportunist. He's looking at the same data and sees a world in a messy, sure, but ultimately really productive transition. Okay, let's start with Priya's take. From where she's sitting as a pragmatist, the signals are just crystal clear. She argues that what we're witnessing here is a cascade of crises, where one destabilizing event is feeding directly into the next, and it's creating this incredibly dangerous feedback loop of global risk. The top-line threats, you just can't argue with them. I mean, just hours after the new U.S. administration took office, we get a call between Putin and Xi. That's not just a phone call, it's a signal that an authoritarian bloc is hardening. At the exact same time, the U.S. makes a clean break from the global health community, signing an executive order to pull out of the World Health Organization. These are direct shocks to the entire global system, and they have immediate, far-reaching consequences. And it's not like these high-level political moves are happening in a vacuum. They have immediate, real-world impacts. You look at the Middle East. Tensions are just skyrocketing with U.S. strikes in Syria and a major Israeli operation in the West Bank. You look at South America. A climate emergency is literally unfolding as we speak with these devastating wildfires in Chile. These are not isolated incidents, They are all symptoms of a system that is under some serious stress. And this isn't just a headline about some military operation. This is a brutal reminder of the human cost of all this geopolitical instability. We're talking about 9+ lives lost, and a ceasefire that was already fragile, just hanging by a thread. And it's the exact same story here, 18 confirmed deaths. See, this isn't some problem for the future or an abstract policy debate we can have. It's the deadly right-now consequence of climate acceleration. The data is a verdict, and that verdict is danger. Period. All right, now let's flip the script. Let's hear from Leo, who sees this exact same data not as a crisis, but as a catalyst for change. For him, as an opportunist who's always focused on future growth, all this disruption, it's a crucible. It's a severe test, yeah, but one that will ultimately forge a new and a stronger world.
So, everyone's freaking out about the new Russia-China axis, right? Well, instead of just seeing a threat, I look at the language they're using themselves. They're calling their partnership a stabilizing force. Now, sure, we can question their motives all day long, but from a purely strategic viewpoint, a strong counterweight to the U.S. could, paradoxically, create a new kind of global balance. It forces everyone to negotiate instead of just acting alone, and that could lead to a more predictable, if, multipolar world order.
And this right here is my core point. Priya sees the U.S. withdrawal from the WHO as a collapse. I see it as a job opening, a huge one. With the big dominant player stepping back, who's going to step up? This creates a massive opportunity for new countries, for new alliances, maybe even for private foundations to completely reimagine and lead global health. It's a power vacuum, and you know what they say about power vacuums? Someone is always going to step in to fill it. So here is the bottom line. Volatility is just the price you pay for major realignment. It's a messy, chaotic process, absolutely, but it's also a cleansing one. It breaks down these old, inefficient systems, and it clears the path for brand new economic growth and more resilient political structures to rise up from the ashes. So, okay, we've got two compelling but totally opposite interpretations here. Priya's world on the brink and Leo's world in transition. So where does that leave you? How do you make sense of this? Well, to help us navigate these competing views and form our own, the report itself actually offers a really powerful framework for analysis. It's called the TPESTE framework, and it's a great way to sort all this noise into clear categories. Let's just walk through it real quick. First, P for political.
The report flags the fundamental reshaping of that US-China-Russia power triangle. Next up, E for economic. The WHO withdrawal isn't just a health thing, it totally threatens global health economics, everything from vaccine supply chains to pandemic readiness. Then S for social. When you see actions like pardons for past insurrections, that's a signal that deep social divisions are actually becoming normalized. R is for regulatory. We're seeing these executive orders being used to just rapidly dismantle international agreements that have stood for years. It's changing the rules of the game overnight. E for environmental. Those Chile fires are a brutal, right-now signal of our extreme climate vulnerability. And finally, TR for trust and ethics. Because at the core of all of this, the credibility of our biggest international institutions is just eroding. Using a framework like this really lets you see how all these pieces connect.
And once you've sorted the chaos using a framework like that, you can move from just reacting to what's happening to proactively asking smarter questions about what comes next. And the report itself lays out a set of urgent strategic questions to help us do exactly that. This is a super simple but really powerful model you can use for pretty much anything. First, you ask, what if? What if this trend of the US pulling back and China and Russia getting closer just keeps going? Then you ask, so what? What are the logical consequences of that? Well, a power vacuum in global governance and, you guessed it, expanding authoritarian influence. And finally, the most important question of all, now what? What should we actually be watching and doing right now? The report says we should be monitoring how other countries respond and tracking any signs of economic decoupling. It's a really actionable way to think through the noise. So that now what question brings us right here. Think of this as your homework for the next 48 hours, pulled straight from the intelligence briefing. Number 1. How are the EU and NATO going to react to the US pulling out of the WHO? The response is absolutely critical. 2. Watch the Chinese markets. They are a super sensitive barometer for geopolitical confidence. 3. Keep a very close eye on the Middle East for any signs that things are escalating even further. And 4. Look for any statements from the global health community about their contingency plans. These are your immediate indicators for what's coming next.
Which brings us all the way back to that central debate, right? Korea's crisis versus Leo's catalyst. Now, the report doesn't hand us the answer. It gives us the data and the tools to find our own. So I'll just leave you with this final thought to chew on. In an era of such profound global realignment, is the greatest risk really clinging to an old world that just doesn't exist anymore, and in doing so, completely ignoring the opportunity, however chaotic it might seem, to build the new one?